Hello, and welcome to the U.S. Climate Alliance's Climate Week virtual event. My name is Taryn Fennessy, and I'm the Policy Director with the U.S. Climate Alliance. For those who don't know, the Alliance is a bipartisan coalition of 25 U.S. governors committed to achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement. Our members represent more than 60% of the U.S. economy and 55% of the U.S. population. And when we speak with one voice and come together to act, it ripples across the country. As you know well by now, Climate Week is the time and the place where the world gathers to showcase leading climate action and discuss how to do more fast. And as we convene today, focused on doing just that, doing more fast at the UN Climate Change Conference and on our national infrastructure package with bold climate and clean energy investment. This is how we will secure our future for our health, our environment, our economy, and our planet. We have a stellar lineup for you today. And first, I'd like to introduce a valued partner in the British government, which is hosting this year's Conference of the Parties in Glasgow. Notably, the COP presidency is focused on showcasing momentum from the whole of society on climate. So it is fitting that we are joined by Dame Karen Pierce, British Ambassador to the US, to talk a little bit more about what to expect in November. Ambassador?
Hello. Thank you to the US Climate Alliance for the invitation to join this virtual event as part of New York Climate Week. The UK, in partnership with Italy, will host COP26 in November, the next significant international milestone after Paris. Our headline objective for COP26 is to keep 1.5 degrees alive. We need to keep the Paris Agreement target of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius well within our reach. The four core goals for our COP26 presidency fall under this headline objective. Each goal aims to increase climate ambition in the areas of mitigation, adaptation, finance, and driving action through collaboration. We're implementing these goals by driving multilateral action through the UN climate change negotiation as the COP president. We're working with countries to enhance national commitments and new long-term strategies that set out concrete pathways to net zero emissions. Through international cooperation and our bilateral collaboration with the United States, we're accelerating practical progress through sectoral policy commitments, particularly on finance, clean energy, zero emissions vehicles, and deforestation. Our fourth COP26 goal on collaboration requires urgent action. We need to collaborate with national, subnational and local governments, businesses and civil society actors to finalise the Paris rulebook and make real progress in the largest emitting sectors of power, road transport and land use. And we're collaborating with these actors to amplify and learn from the voices of those most affected by climate change, to inspire governments to increase their ambition and to work with us to deliver a truly all-of-society and inclusive COP. States have a key collaboration role to play in demonstrating the huge momentum to keep 1.5 degrees alive. Our main COP26 ask of states, regions and cities is to join the Race to Zero campaign. I've had the pleasure of talking to a number of governors as I make my way right the way across the United States. And I know the enormous efforts that you're making, and we look forward to being able to welcome you to Glasgow. For those of you who will be in the United States during COP26, the US-British network is looking forward to working with you so that it's possible to engage with the theme days and the events taking place in Glasgow on finance, energy, nature, adaptation, and zero-emission vehicles, among the others. To echo the theme of Climate Week, it's now about getting it done. To meet the Paris Agreement goals, we need to decarbonise the global economy 3 to 5 times faster over the coming decade than we have in the preceding 2. And we need a step change in building resilience. I hope you can join us on a path of inspiring climate ambition ahead of Glasgow and at the COP26 conference. It's time for us all to keep 1.5 degrees alive and come together for the good of the planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Pierce. Another valuable partnership the Alliance has been working tirelessly to build is with the federal government, and we are really proud to have one of the administration's top climate leaders with us today. Michael S. Regan is the 16th administrator of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and someone we hold in the highest esteem, not only for his work in Washington, but also for what he did in recent years to help drive climate action at the state level in North Carolina, a key member of our coalition. Administrator Regan?
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here with some of our nation's most influential climate leaders. As governors, you have a front row seat to the impacts of climate change. You've seen firsthand the devastating remnants of a powerful hurricane, raging wildfire, and historic flooding. You comforted your communities in the aftermath. So you understand intimately the urgency of taking swift, bold climate action. Many of you are already leading the way forward with ambitious plans to tackle this crisis while prioritizing overburdened communities. I'm proud of the work you're doing, and I'm excited to work together to tackle the climate crisis head on. The decisions we make today and in the next couple of months at COP will shape our future for decades to come. That's why under President Biden's leadership, we're not wasting a minute. This administration is laser focused on making investments today that will prepare communities for extreme weather events, shore up our infrastructure to climate impacts, and accelerate progress on much-needed water infrastructure improvements. That's exactly what President Biden's plan to Build Back Better is all about. It's a shot in the arm against climate change and a game changer for the American people, especially working families. By building back better, we can create good-paying jobs in communities nationwide. We can create a stronger, healthier, more equitable future, and we can fundamentally improve people's lives. So let's get to work. Thanks again for having me. I'm looking forward to continuing our work together in the run-up to Glasgow.
Thank you, Administrator Regan. We couldn't agree more. Next, we're lucky enough to have three of the nation's top climate governors with us. Three leaders who are showing us what a better future could look like in America. Governor David Ige is the 8th governor of the state of Hawaii and boldly set the state's 100% renewable energy goal way back in 2015. He has made achieving this target and transforming Hawaii's economy a top priority. Governor Ige is showing us that ambitious climate priorities are good for the economy and good for jobs. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham is the 32nd governor of the state of New Mexico and the first Democratic Latina to be elected governor in U.S. history. Governor Lujan Grisham is the driving force behind New Mexico's transition from an oil and gas economy to a clean energy economy. And Governor Jay Inslee is currently the longest serving governor in the U.S., and his experience shows. Governor Inslee's record of combating climate change, promoting clean air and water, and supporting clean energy jobs is a model for the country. Notably, all three governors, along with several others, are planning to participate in COP26 this November in Scotland. So that's where we'll begin our conversation. Governor Inslee, looking ahead to COP26 in just over a month, can you talk a little bit about how U.S. governors can drive greater ambition and action from other subnational and national governments outside the United States?
You bet. Thank you. And by the way, it's just such a joy to join my two colleagues. These two governors you just introduced have been absolute tigers on this subject, and they've inspired us all across the country. So I'm looking forward to their comments. Well, I would start by saying we need to identify who we are as governors, and we have been referred to as subnationals. So when you go to these international conferences, they make reference to governors and mayors and executives as subnationals. We think of ourselves as supranationals. And I believe that is the accurate assessment of what we're capable of doing, because local communities, local states, provinces, cities, counties, we have the ability to be more ambitious than our federal national partners across the globe. We have the ability to act more quickly. We have the ability to be more innovative, and we have demonstrated this with frequently. First off, the members of the U.S. Climate Alliance, we've demonstrated that in the United States but other counties and mayors across the world have done so as well. So I would say the first thing that in order to achieve the end you address is to recognize our potency, our strength in the ability to move this needle. We should be able to do just as much in the fight against climate change as the national governments in our own hometowns and states. And we're doing that. You look at our 3 states by these governors, we are moving the needle big time. We just need everybody to do that across the United States. So the second thing we just need to do, in answer to your question, is to develop these relationships to encourage other governors, mayors, and the like to join us in Glasgow. And we're doing that, one county executive, one governor at a time. We've engaged the under 2 group. We're engaging ambassadors. We're calling people. We're emailing people. And so far, we've got a good start of this, but we have a lot more people that we want to join this coalition. And when we're doing this, we want to be ambitious. So this framework that we have set up basically have asked local leaders, governors and mayors alike to join with specific commitments and actual things that can be implemented rather than vague, amorphous, long range kind of statements of intent. So those who do join us will be putting meat on the bone. And fortunately, we've been demonstrated the ability to do that. Now, how do we make this work? Well, obviously it's collegial to ask people to join us, but it's also a little competitive, right? So we want people to be inspired by us. When Michelle does something great in New Mexico, that inspires me to up our game in Washington. When I do something here, it might inspire Governor Ige. So this relationship of partnership and friendly competition, we think is going to bode well in Glasgow, and I'm really looking forward to it. This is a moment we don't have any time to waste.
And Taryn, if I can add to Governor Inslee's remarks, he demonstrated what it looks like state to state, community to community to have leadership that is aligned. And when I was running for governor and working on any number of climate change targets and committing to joining the U.S. Climate Alliance and doing all of this work, he came to New Mexico and we visited an environmental lab at a community college. And it was his leadership and what he demonstrated, his innovation on the ground, that created a platform for me, literally first day in office. I'm working on climate change. So I don't want to understate or underestimate the power of those relationships and that leadership, and also for governors to have economic successes related, which in and of themselves make the right kind of changes, because these are multi-state, multinational companies, and they began to behave in that way, right? Meeting these targets in other states and in other countries. And that is also extremely powerful in this effort.
Thank you, Governor Lujan Grisham. I think that is a very valid point about how we do inspire each other and how we can lean on one another. You'll also be going with this delegation of governors to this year's COP. Can you talk a little bit more about what sort of role you hope to play and hope other states will play in this international context?
Well, no question, right, that we want to demonstrate what's working in our states. We want to talk about the challenges. We're decarbonizing the utility sector. We're working with the federal government and other states to decarbonize the transportation sector. We've got measures in place to decarbonize the agricultural sector. I get a chance to not only demonstrate what we're doing, and we're leading in moving or restricting and eliminating greenhouse gas emissions. And when I think Governor Inslee and I are always competing, and I love it if I'm still ahead on this one, but I don't know for sure. I believe we still have the leading methane rules in place, and we're about to launch our ozone rules. And again, without the work by the other governors, including Governor Ige, I don't have a platform to take to my legislature to implement, because I can show that it works because it's working in other states. I want to know what's going on. I want to know what's working. I want to network. I want to demonstrate our leadership and our effectiveness. And I want to know what else I need to be doing to showcase our commitment to make sure that our 1.5 target is realizable because we're dealing with any number of climate change realities around the globe and in the country, particularly in the West, notwithstanding that we understand rising sea levels, tropical storms, and hurricanes, but we're quite literally running out of water. And we know that wildfires and water, the aridification around the globe is a sizable challenge to serving our constituents and safeguarding families for the future. Committing to that work, that research, that innovation, and those targets tells every American that we have the ability to do it and we're being looked at as leaders around the globe. And so I'm delighted to be participating and have no doubt that these governors and other worldwide leaders and community leaders are going to inspire me to go to the next step in any number of innovations and strategies.
And that level of ambition is exactly what this COP presidency has set out as their goals. As you all know, the conference goals coming up in November are focused about securing global net zero by mid-century, keeping that 1.5 degrees within reach, adapting and protecting communities and natural habitats, mobilizing finance, and then working collectively to deliver on all of this. Governor Ige, can you speak a little bit to how these goals align with your own efforts in Hawaii?
Aloha, Taryn, and I just really want to thank everybody participating in Climate Week for really caring about climate change and really being willing to take action. You know, I'm excited because we see finally that global and federal goals align so closely with our Hawaii goals. In the case of renewable energy for electricity, the president has even raised the bar first set by Hawaii in 2015 to get to 100% clean renewable energy by 2045. Since Hawaii, many other states and countries around the world have set renewable portfolio standards, including Governors Lujan, Grisham, and Governors Inslee. And I think it is so important. You know, it really is about staking out those goals and then demonstrating that it's real and realistic and achievable. Now, the president has set the national goal to reach 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by even more aggressive goals, 2035. And we know that Washington State, New Mexico, and Hawaii will be at the forefront of leading that charge. We know it's possible. Most importantly, we know it must be done. That just shows how states can influence the global conversation. And that's also why I think it's so important that states be represented at this year's COP. We've been at it now for 5, 6, 8 years. I know Governor Inslee is the longest serving governor, and it's in our core values. We need to carry that message that net zero by mid-century is moving in the right direction. But the race is beyond zero, not stopping at carbon neutral. We know that we need to sequester more than we put into the air if we're going to ensure to keep the world from heating up beyond 1.5 degrees. And that's why Hawaii's goal is to be carbon negative as quickly as practical, but no later than 2045. Just like the 100% renewable energy standards, we believe negative emissions is where the global conversation must go. And as you may have heard, Hawaii was the first US state to declare a climate emergency. Hawaii delegates also attended the World Conservation Congress in France last month, which was something we hosted in 2016. Our delegates helped lead the creation of the Climate Crisis Commission for the International Union of Conservation of Nature, because protecting our natural environment is so critical. We are doing this in Hawaii through 2 initiatives. I started to protect 30% of our important watersheds and manage 30% of our nearshore waters by 2030, which shows again that Hawaii is already doing the 30 by 30 thing that we're glad to see the president adopt as part of his 30 by 30 conservation plan. But it's not enough to just set goals. We are also about putting in the hard work and making it happen. I believe that Hawaii's cultural heart of aloha allows us to work together and with each other across state lines around the planet and find like-spirited people from around the world to deliver on these ambitious goals. You know, I'm excited because the entire country and the world has to work together in order to be successful. We can only be successful as a planet, and states are glad to lead the way.
Governor Ige, you demonstrate so much leadership in Hawaii and so much of how states can serve as a test bed for policies that can be scaled up to the national level. As you all know, this year we're going to be having a COP where the federal government is re-engaged, and we have a partner in the federal government. I wonder if, and this is to all of you, if you could speak a little bit about how that relationship, that state-federal relationship, has changed in the last year with regard to climate.
I can start. I mean, you know, the Biden administration has really been a breath of fresh air for all of us governors and the entire planet. You know, he's pushing the envelope even further than we've been. You know, I'm excited about the carbon neutral by 2035, because that allows me to be more aggressive in the state of Hawaii than we've already been. So I'm just really excited to finally have a federal government that shares our core values.
Yeah, and I might add, and I know that Governor Inslee will as well. Let's start here. We have an administration that believes the science and is clear that climate change is real. You can't work in a context of a federal government that doesn't have those, as you said, Governor Ige, core values, and is clear about the science and also clear about taking responsibility and being accountable. So if you just start there, there is immeasurable differences in dealing with the Biden-Harris administration. Two, they are demonstrating on the ground work. As an example, the new Secretary of Interior, a New Mexican, Secretary Deb Haaland, has made many visits to New Mexico, working on making sure that we have a successful transition and supporting us to make sure that our oil and gas sector is accountable for methane, ozone, and turning methane into a fuel cell on site, and being very clear that those standards will be the standards that they're upholding on federal land. So we're aligned completely to make sure that we're using innovation, technology, and reducing or eliminating those issues at the source so that our transition into renewable energy can move faster and more effectively. Two, Secretary Granholm has also made a direct visit to New Mexico and is helping us create the right infrastructure for hydrogen. We believe that New Mexico can be a hydrogen hub, using hydrogen as the vehicle to decarbonize our transportation sector. And we're already seeing private sector innovation being driven by this effort. And it's quite likely that New Mexico is the first place in the country that converts a power plant to a hydrogen plant. And as we do that, we will be doing carbon sequestration. And our geology in the oil and gas sector allows us to do that, being inspired by Governor Ige, showing that we can have a carbon negative footprint as we lead in those spaces. And no question that the support we've received from Administrator Regan in all of our efforts is remarkable. And last but not least, we've just adopted the 30 by 30, a conservation plan that is very clear that if we do right by our land, if we do right by our water and watersheds, then that conservation is also a giant leap towards making sure that we meet our climate goals and our decarbonization goals for the state, for the country, and leaning in so that we're effective partners around the globe.
Governor Inslee, any thoughts on this?
Well, yes. First off, I just have to say I could not be more delighted by the leadership of President Biden. He has been incredibly comprehensive. He has been bold, which is, tough sometimes. He has been courageous. He has been ambitious, and he has been realistic. I want to laud his leadership on it. I think it's been fantastic for us. And the obvious difference is so clear from his predecessor in office. In a not obvious way. The obvious way is that we have a person who believes in science, who believes in gravity. The previous occupant didn't believe in science. He thought gravity was a communist plot and quantum physics was, something from the Martians or something. The obvious difference is we have a president who understands and embraces science. The unobvious difference, I think, is just as important. And that is that he recognizes the positive economic value of fighting climate change. This recognition that drives his entire program is just as important as the fact that he understands science, because he understands that there is no single greater job creation opportunity than the clean energy transformation that we're going. And that has driven all of his policies. And I get to see this firsthand. I know we're so, concerned about how fast climate change is going, but we ought to be thrilled at the pace of job creation that's going on. Look, the states that are in this climate alliance are the states with the fastest economic growth, and that's not a coincidence. It is a cause of our economic growth. Yesterday, I went to a company in Maltby, Washington, that has invented a new technology for a silicon anode in a battery that could extend batteries capacity by 50% in the cars we drive. Think of the consequences of that, of reducing pollution. That afternoon, I went out and saw the near completion of the world's first commercial all-electric propulsion, zero carbon emitting plane in world history. We hope to have that flying this fall. And these are all jobs. These are hundreds of jobs in my state because of this. So the Biden recognition as a job creation factory is fundamentally important. But there's another thing I just want to note on our relationship with the federal government. It's incredible. We're so thrilled about what's going on. But we should be more ambitious, almost by definition, than the federal government. Whatever the federal government is doing, we governors need to be more ambitious. And the reason is we don't have to deal with the filibuster. We don't have to deal with some states that are under control of a party that still doesn't believe in science and the laws of gravity. So we almost by necessity should set ourselves as to being more ambitious, and we are. We're doing things in my state that the president has not proposed that are still necessary because he can't get them through the filibuster. So we need to be equally committed to this, even if we get this fantastic bill through of the Build Back Better, which we all are pushing for. And by the way, needs to happen in conjunction at the same time as the infrastructure bill. These need to move together because it's the only way we're going to have adequate job creation in our country.
And with that great segue, let's transition from the global stage to the domestic stage and talk a little bit more about what really does need to happen on Capitol Hill over the next several weeks on infrastructure to secure a more prosperous future for the people of Washington, Hawaii, New Mexico, and really all of America. Governor Lujan Grisham, how important is what we do at home on a bipartisan infrastructure deal and a comprehensive reconciliation bill in demonstrating that America is ready to lead and solve the climate crisis at the COP in November? And what would your message to Congress be on this?
Well, let's start with the message to Congress, which has been consistent from the onset of President Biden's public announcement about his efforts, both on the campaign trail and then putting pen to paper in the Build Back Better plan. Without the core infrastructure, as we're dealing with water infrastructure, we don't have the resources to do that work. It's essential work as we're combating the aridification of the West. Has to happen. Second, without the broadband components that are identified, both in the rescue plan, but really identified and harnessed in the infrastructure effort. Well, we can't do the grid modernization or the transmission or all the other work, which means that not only are we engaged in renewable energy, we are providing renewable energy to the rest of the country. And you're talking to states who have the lead solar, wind, right, power, geothermal resources for the country. So we're in a position to not only meet our own goals, but to support the rest of the country to meet its goals and their economic drivers. So those aspects for us are incredibly meaningful, because to do that incrementally here could take more than a decade. We don't have that kind of time. And without lauding, as I don't think I need to, all of the jobs that that provides in a green energy, right, sectors, it makes differences in the lives of I can tell you, particularly on the water aspects, in every single New Mexican's life. And we're really behind in connectivity. And we are preparing for Build Back Better by having new innovative companies that have a different way of deploying connectivity for our most rural and frontier communities in the state. So we're ready to go. And like every state, without that human infrastructure, we aren't going to be able to support innovation and careers in a growing green energy economy. And for New Mexico, if we don't move people out of poverty, and if we don't invest, right, in the caregivers in our families, we aren't going to be able to have the service structure aligned with all of our goals, and they must occur together. This notion that somehow that building a dam is different than making sure that long-term care and child care and all the other human investments so that families are able to meet, right, with us at the place that we are, this transformation in our country makes no sense whatsoever. And so the message again to Congress is they have a real opportunity here. And it's just as important as their obligation, not just to Americans and to the country and every state they represent, but for America to again be a leader in this space in particular around the globe. It must occur.
Thank you, Governor Lujan. Grisham. You touched a little bit on that critical link between the climate-centered infrastructure investments, economic opportunity, and equity. Governor Ige, I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit more on that critical link that exists between infrastructure investment, opportunity, and that equity and inclusivity piece.
Absolutely. And, I think we see as governors how important this investment is, because it does give us the opportunity. We all know that we need to accelerate the transformation that our country and the planet is undergoing. But that investment from the Congress in both the infrastructure bill as well as the human resource is so critically important to ensuring that we can raise all ships during this once in a generation opportunity. We know that investments in the human resource are just foundational in our community to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to participate in this transformation. We've seen this pandemic has pointed out that those who don't have broadband access will be left behind. We know that we have an obligation as government leaders to ensure that that doesn't happen. We know that the digital economy will touch every single job in our communities. And we need to make sure as governors that we can bring our entire community there and be able to deliver quality education up to the university level, because that's what our economy and that's what our community will demand. So, I am excited about that possibility. And we as governors can't stress enough about how both of those investments by the Congress are so fundamentally important to raise everyone in our community and ensure that each and every citizen has equal access to that opportunity.
Governor Inslee, both Governor Ige and Governor Lujan Grisham talked about the importance of these investments at home. Where do you intend to prioritize this new infrastructure investment in your state? And where are the greatest needs, and where is there the most potential for impact in Washington state?
Well, we're going to prioritize it not just on one criteria, but on two. And fortunately, they're very consistent. One is their ability to reduce carbon, from our economy. That's the most obvious criteria. And we'll just look for the policies and the investments that do the most with a dollar of investment. But at the same time, we will also judge it from a criteria for job creation, which is of great importance to us as well. Fortunately, those two criteria most frequently go together and have been so successful, and we know they have been successful. I talked about that battery company that we just talked about. Some of that represents work that did early in research that now results in actual job creation. So we know some of these early investments make a lot of difference. That's why the tax credit portion of the reconciliation bill is so important, because we know some of those early dollars end up doing so much in job creation. So from the industrial standpoint, we'll look at transportation decarbonization. We need to get a clearer or cleaner, more comprehensive charging station infrastructure throughout the state of Washington. We've done a good job so far of electrifying our interstate system up and down our interstates, but this needs to get into the communities. It needs to get into the apartments, right? So we have to find a way to get charging infrastructure for people who don't have homes or a garage to plug into. My electric car is plugged into my garage, but I've got a garage, or at least a basement. It's got a door I have to fight to open every day, but I can charge it. I have a house built in 1931. But you look at, 50% of our people are in apartments, they don't have charging stations. So finding that charging infrastructure is very important in the electrification ultimately for our system. After that, we look at building efficiency, which is the gold mine of decarbonization, which is to don't waste energy. And that is in every single building in the United States almost, can use probably, I'm overstating this a little bit, but a profitable investment to reduce the wastage of energy. And the technologies that are now coming on make these investments incredible. I met a fellow just a couple of days ago who is planning like 10,000 net zero housing units in Seattle in a particular neighborhood using distributed energy from wasted energy from our hospitals to use it to heat our housing system. That needs an investment, and those tax credits are important in that particular issue. So if I were then obviously helping people get into electric vehicles or hydrogen vehicles, ultimately with Governor Grisham's vision, I would say those may be the third most important. Now, I don't want to obviate investment in municipalities as well. The day I met Governor Grisham when she was running for office, I also met a group of Latinx parents who had banded together to try to replace their diesel buses that their kids were choking on because they have to warm up on some of those cold mornings in New Mexico, and they're choking on this diesel smoke. So they had I can't remember the name of their group, but they've banded together to buy electric buses, which now we need to help school districts and municipalities really electrify our municipal transportation system as well. Now, the good news is we can do that. And again, this is tied to job creation. I went 2 weeks ago to groundbreaking of Washington State's first electric bus manufacturing plant. They're going to have hundreds of workers making electric buses that we can buy for our school districts. So there's 4 priorities. I know there are many, many more, but you can't make a better investment right now because these dollars per dollar job or clean energy investments create more jobs per dollar than any other sector of the U.S. economy. And it's growing faster. So these are great investments just from a profitability standpoint as well.
Thank you. Sounds like you've got big plans for this investment. Governor Lujan Grisham. Governor Ige and Governor Lujan Grisham, I wonder if either of you want to chime in here with where you would prioritize these investments for your state.
Michelle, you wanna go ahead?
Sure, Governor Ige. This was great because now that Governor Inslee did that, we're just going to steal a whole lot of his strategies. We've leaned in on many of the same aspects, and we want to regionalize our work with electric vehicles. We're working on statewide connectivity. Broadband is a clear priority. We've held back rescue dollars so that we can combine them with what we expect to see in the Build Back Better infrastructure bill. But here are a couple other areas that deal with some of those equity investments on top of the things that we heard Governor Inslee talk about. It's clear to me that we need to deal with affordable housing in this state and those social equity investments and rural economic investments, which tie really well with good, green, and renewable energy jobs. But there are some missing components. And we realize that if we don't start to support that effort, then I can't deliver. And you've heard all of us touch on that. I can't deliver healthcare. I can't provide education. All of that is tied to our ability to deploy broadband and have real connectivity. And again, we want microgrids and community solar and that relationship that is, no matter how small that village, town, city, county is, we think we can put together those kind of platforms that incentivize their ability to be green, go green, and to support those fragile households in ways we frankly have not been able to do to date. And right now in New Mexico, which is exactly what all these governors will tell you, now our utility costs are far cheaper for the consumer if it's renewable. And so if we can make that more localized, we know that we're going to provide incredible benefits to those New Mexico families, which means they stay here, which means they keep working here, which means we're building a sustainable economy for the future. So affordable housing, grid modernization, microgrids, more investments in renewable energy, all of our dams, all of our water, all of our watersheds, all of our water infrastructure, all of our flooding issues, which is an interesting dichotomy for a state that is in the worst extreme drought ever, and we're in the process of aridification. But the reality is when we get a monsoon, we're washing away whole communities. All of that now can be addressed in one fell swoop because of the vision of the Biden-Harris administration and the recognition that going green means, and saving the planet means, investing in those jobs today and tomorrow that create real sustainability.
Thanks. And Taryn, I just really want to just quickly add, the priorities are the same. We share the same core values, but I did want to add one kind of tidbit. Governor Inslee talked about that first net zero aircraft that they're developing in Washington State. They're testing some of those vehicles here in the islands. We've been committed to net zero and net negative, actually. And it really is about the goals and aspirations that all of us have as supranational entities that pushes the envelope and attracts investment. It's about the entire community seeing the goal and really beginning to attract investments to make it happen. And that's really what I'm most excited about.
Great. Well, thank you. You all have taken such a leadership role in not fixating on some of the very real and big impediments to climate action that can sometimes feel overwhelming and daunting, but instead you focused on the opportunity and the solutions. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit and ask, what if either of you any of you had to choose one or two things that have come from your state that you're particularly proud of, the climate solution that you as a state worked really hard on, that you overcame those impediments to implement real solutions, and you'd like to see those scaled up either to other states across the nation or to the federal government. Or let's not stop there, let's go global. If there are one or two climate solutions that you have implemented in your states that you're particularly proud of, that are scalable and you would like to see go global, what would they be?
Well, I'll just start really quickly. I mean, I do think the aspiration is important. And I think what you'll hear from the three of us is that it gets applied and translated differently in all of our states because the states are so different. But, you know, the whole notion and aspiration for being net negative, it's really beyond net zero at this point. You know, we've seen these 500-year events happen virtually every year here in the state of Hawaii. I know Governor Lujan Grisham talks about the worst drought in decades in New Mexico. Same thing is happening here in Hawaii. We're seeing the worst droughts. You know, it appears differently and the solutions are different, but we are seeing the climate catastrophe really occur in all of our states. So I do think it's important to recognize and translate. You know, in Hawaii, we had experienced our second rain bomb event here on Kauai in 3 years, and there were record rainfalls. You know, in 2018, we had 50 inches of rain in a 24-hour period that, you know, isolated a significant community because we had 14 landslides in about a half-mile stretch of our highways. You know, we've seen 3 bridges washed out, and that community was completely isolated from the rest of Kauai. I think the scary thing is that we are seeing these 500-year events happen more and more frequently, and it's impacting a bigger part of our community. So, you know, we want to emphasize that I think everybody needs to be committed to taking action now and not waiting for somebody else to do it. It really is about recognizing that we can only be successful as a community, and we all need to be motivated to do as much as we can, as quickly as we can, but we all need to recognize that we can only be successful if we do it together.
Thank you, Governor.
I'm going to let Governor Inslee close because he's a powerful closer, and I don't want to, you know, be in the spotlight in that way. I think that New Mexico is no doubt going to be a real leader in a transition aspect. I mean, we passed our first significant piece of legislation, the Energy Transition Act, decarbonizing our utility sector. And in doing that, we created social equity and equity investments, not just for communities who are affected in that transition, but to workers. Because this whole debate about retraining, how that happens, when that happens, the reality is if you don't give those workers a sense of dignity that we value you and these funds are available, we pay your mortgage, you know, food on the table, we send your kids to college or to whatever school certificate program of their choice. And we're going to work in addition in an equity fund in your county or community to determine those jobs of the future. So there's a real sense that it's collective. That's how we got every utility, including our rural co-ops, all on the same page. That I think is groundbreaking work where we create winners and winners and winners, which we know in addressing climate change is not just realistic, it has to be part of those core values and aspects of all of our investments. And I'm very excited that I think New Mexico is going to be a hydrogen hub, and we're about to pass a Hydrogen Hub Act. And I think those innovations will lend themselves to replication worldwide. And I think we're actually potentially competing on that front with the UK. And that's exactly how that should look. Those best practices will replicate themselves. And every time they do, they'll be a little bit better, state to state, country to country, region to region. And so I'm really proud of that work in our state.
Governor Inslee, what are you most proud of from Washington and what you've accomplished in throughout your tenure?
Well, helping get Governor Grisham elected. That's what I'm doing. You know, I'm proud to be on this team. I just love working with these governors who are inspiring their states and the people, the governors who are in this alliance. That's what they're doing in their own way. So it's great to be on a great team. I would say a couple of things. First off, our cap and invest bill is, I think, the envy of the nation, or should be, in part because it's appropriately ambitious. It's very, very well crafted so that it's a real policy, not just a wish list. It works with businesses on how they really work. But I think it has the best environmental justice provisions that we all should aspire to, because we know overburdened communities, frequently BIPOC communities, almost always low-income communities, have been swallowing diesel smoke and toxic waste for way too long. And we made sure that in our investments protected these overburdened communities. It is the most ambitious in that regard. We learned from some of the experience of California to make it more effective. And so it's something we're very proud of. But pride is not the right thing here because we have so much more work to do, right? So my state has a long ways to go. I'm still fighting with my legislatures on some things that need improvement. And I'm really hopeful, if I can mention one other thing that we're proud of, and that is our 100% clean electrical grid bill, which is a real bill. It's an enforceable bill. We need that on the national level. The electrical grid payment bill or the clean standard bill is absolutely necessary in the reconciliation bill. We cannot go home without that from the Congress this year. So I'm proud of what we've done. This is one where we really do need the federal government to move forward, and we ought to be committed to that.
That partnership with the federal government really does present an opportunity for all of us to go further, faster together.
Right.
As we have a few minutes left, just open it up to you all to give us your parting thoughts. What is the message you want to convey? Any other critical pieces that we should think about as we move forward in hoping this infrastructure passes, in going into Glasgow? What are your final thoughts?
That's a tough ask, but an area that I certainly didn't talk about is not only are we demonstrating that we have a lot to do in a very short amount of time that takes considerable commitment and leadership, but there's a whole series, right, of future generations that are counting on us. And there is a real sense of both, eco-anxiety for young people, but also this desire to become more active in areas that are meaningful to them. They want to be able to see their own personal commitment. And we have to keep mobilizing all of these advocates. And, to hear Governor Inslee be able to refer to, sort of moms in a community action environment saying, look, we can't allow our children to be impacted negatively by transportation that we have if we don't change them to electric or hydrogen or do something different, we're basically required to poison our children in our communities while they go to school, right? People are both anxious and hungry for an opportunity to support these efforts. And this, COP26 is a renewed commitment to re-energize and to harness global advocacy, because it's going to take that kind of monumental movement to keep reach and demand that these targets are met. We can't do it by ourselves, and we know that, but we can engage those who can help us get this done. And I think this is a huge opportunity, and we can't lose it. I don't know that we aren't, but I just want to say it out loud. We're going to need everyone working collectively, cohesively with us around the globe.
That's a hard one to follow up, but Governor Inslee, Governor Ige, anything else that you want to add?
Well, I would add that we need to recognize that these are great days. My wife gave me a little coin dish from a quote from Winston Churchill during the Blitz, and the bombs were falling and London was on fire. And somebody came up to him and said, "You must be the most depressed person in the world." And he says, "No, you need to understand, these are great days. These are great days because we have so much at stake, and we have never perhaps the consequences where we can do more good than maybe any other time in human history. So these are great days to be inspired by an opportunity for all of us to be leaders. And we have a renewable resource that we need to use, and that's just grit. Look, we've been at this for a long time. I've been at this for a quarter of a century. I wrote a book about it, 14 years ago. And yet here we are still in this precipice. We have to show grit and determination right now, and a never say die and take no prisoners approach here. That's one of the things we have to focus on, I believe. And if we do that, I believe we're going to succeed. I do not believe it's human destiny to allow us to lose our home planet. So I look forward to working with everybody to make that happen.
I would also just comment that, we vividly see with the Global News Network and everything connected, the full range of climate impacts, from drought to fires, mosquitoes here in the islands wiping out native species, coral bleaching, rising sea levels, coastal erosion. The entire planet is able to see those impacts. As Governor Inslee had said, it's not about denying the science. The science is obvious. We all know that we cannot let the world temperature go past 1.5 degrees. And we need to take action now. As Governor Lujan Grisham mentioned, our children understand it. I get stopped by school children all the time about, "Governor, why aren't you doing more?" They get it. They understand that the planet is in peril, and they are demanding that we take action for their generation. We know that we can only be successful as a planet. Each and every one of our communities need to stand up to be counted, to take the action necessary to ensure that we can keep the global warming below 1.5 degrees, and we need to take whatever action is necessary to make that happen. And as Jay said, I do believe that the planet will do this.
Thank you, Governor Ige, Governor Inslee, and Governor Lujan Grisham. We are so fortunate to have you as members of the U.S. Climate Alliance and to have your leadership for today and for our future generations. To close the program, we're actually joined by another top Alliance governor. Governor Janet Mills is the 75th governor of Maine and the first woman to hold this job. She is fighting for Maine's climate and economy and is here to remind us of the importance of this moment. Governor Mills?
Hello, this is Governor Janet Mills from the great state of Maine and a proud member of the U.S. Climate Alliance. I wish I could be with you in person to talk to you, but I want to thank the U.S. Climate Alliance for inviting me to say a few words by Zoom and remotely during U.S. Climate Week. This is a critical moment for our nation and for the world. The latest IPCC assessment has called climate change a code red for humanity. In a few weeks, the world will gather in Glasgow for COP26. I hope to be there. Here in the United States, the Congress debates once-in-a-lifetime investments to combat climate change and create millions of good jobs. 2 years ago today, I appeared before the United Nations General Assembly, and I told them that with respect to climate change, Maine won't wait. Last December, my administration took action and released its bold plan to address the threats of climate change. What did we call it? You guessed it. Maine won't wait. Our plan puts us on a path to meet our ambitious and aggressive carbon emission and clean energy goals and to contribute to the world's efforts to combat climate change and reduce dangerous greenhouse gas emissions. In the coming years, and with the help of President Biden's Build Back Better plan, Maine will more than double our clean energy and energy efficiency jobs. We will double the pace of home weatherization. We will expand incentives for electric vehicles and build more EV charging stations across our state. We'll invest in public transportation and affordable housing to reduce travel by Maine people. And we will ensure that communities prepare for the increasing impacts of climate change, from rising sea levels and more weather events. With more than 3,000 miles of coastline, and countless communities that rely so much on the ocean for their livelihoods, preparing for climate change in Maine is a difficult thing, but critical. With the legislature, we enacted recently significant investments under the Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, which is our plan to funnel the federal funds, use the American Rescue Plan to help combat climate change and get our economy back on track. I'm proud of the progress we've made so far, but there's a lot more we can do. We need to strengthen our critical infrastructure, and the President's plan will help us do that. As always, you have a committed partner in my administration. I thank the U.S. Climate Alliance and my fellow governors across the country for their continued commitment to action. When it comes to climate change, Maine won't wait. Will you?